Welcome everybody, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to our webinar today entitled Youth Leaders, Social Media and Responsible Leadership. I'm going to start by introducing what's got the order of our presentations today. So could I have the next slide, please, so I can see the order of presentations? Okay, I will, thank you, Sarah. Got a few technical hitches. Excellent, thank you. So today we've got a fantastic variety of speakers on our various presentations. First of all, I would like to say that Mejia, who's the Director, Division for People and Social Inclusion in UNITAR, has unexpectedly been called away at the very last minute, but he has managed to make a recording for us. And so I will be showing that recording and then summing up a bit about what he said before I introduce the keynote speaker. And our keynote speaker today is Sebastian Hoffbauer. And before I introduce each speaker, before their presentations, I will tell you a little bit about them at that particular time. So after our keynote speaker, we will go on to Nadia Ahmed Abdalla. And then we have Marina El Khawand. And then we have Adrian Sladdin. And last of all, but not least at all, we have Mike Eldon, who will also be joined in his presentation by Samuel Munawwefa. So I'm really excited about this particular webinar. It's a webinar that's very close to my heart. And we will first of all start with an opening introduction from Mejia, and I apologize in advance if the volume is not clear, but I will sum up, and we have run through it and we can understand it, but it isn't as clear as we would like it to be. So thank you, Sarah, if we could listen to the presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, welcome to this webinar that the Institute for Responsible Leadership and UNITAR are organizing, Youth Leaders, Social Media and Responsible Leadership. A very interesting topic, because we all know that youth leaders are vital to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations have postulated. Your generation is critical in this quest. Now, we have the cases of Greta Thunberg and Malala Yousafzai and several others that have become great influencers, leaders that have galvanized people on issues of girls' education, climate change, and beyond. And we admire them, but we also know that they suffer many challenges. And some of the challenges in exercising their leadership is how to control or input or provide input so the narrative is not going out of course. So it's not easy to manage social media and communication as a whole when you are a young leader that wants to influence society for the best. One question is if their leadership is indeed a force for good. We believe so in the United Nations, but we also believe that it comes with a degree of responsibility because they do influence society in the way they go forward. At the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR, that I have the privilege of representing today, I speak to you from Geneva, from the Palais des Nations. We are convinced that these type of discussions, again on youth, social media, and responsible leadership, really contribute to our understanding of how our society works. We believe that whatever happens with the future, whatever happens with the Sustainable Development Goals to be achieved by the year 2030, we need to have the next generation involved. So it's important that we understand that the contribution of the next generation and the encouragement that we give to the next generation to show us the leadership that society expects comes with all these criteria, all these requisites of integrity, of responsibility, of wisdom that is many times challenged when we see the reality that influencers face when you use social media. I want to share with you some numbers that perhaps help us to understand the potential of the next generation and why the narrative and the discourse through social media that the next generation is having has a humongous impact. According to the World Bank, a couple of years ago, of the entire global population, 42% is of less than 25 years of age globally. But then if you dissect that in a more regional way, I actually wrote down the numbers. Allow me to share them with you. If you focus on the population of 15 years or less, listen to the differences when you go to a regional basis. In Africa, 40% of the population has 15 years of age or less, and in Europe, only 16%. Africa 40%, Europe 16%. Africa has a great potential ahead. Europe perhaps a little less. Is a drastic difference. But I wanted to use those numbers to focus on the fact that the world is young and that there is a narrative and an interaction happening not only on social media, but face-to-face every single day. And that narrative to be better understood, and the people influencing that narrative should demonstrate responsible leadership. Before I conclude, I would like to acknowledge our keynote speaker for today, a great friend of ours, Mr. Sebastian Hoffbauer, who used to be part of our team at UNITAR here in Geneva. Sebastian is a great example of a youth leader and someone that I'm sure is going to illustrate better all these issues with his own case. And at the same time, I want to acknowledge as well Professor Mike Sachs and Ms. Julia Whittaker, who lead the Institute for Responsible Leadership out of London. They are excellent friends of the United Nations and of UNITAR, and we commend them for their efforts to bring all these debates and analysis and the opportunity to come together through these webinars and the training that they offer at the IRL. So with that, thanks to you, dear participant, for giving us time today. I wish you success in the deliberations ahead. And again, on behalf of the United Nations and of UNITAR, thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Alex. Again, you know, some of the audio wasn't as clear as we would normally have that, and it's very unfortunate that Alex can't be there himself. But I have personally worked with Alex over a number of years now on various different webinars, and it's always a pleasure to work with him and UNITAR and the United Nations. And, you know, in his summing up, he is actually highlighting, you know, the importance and the power and influence that social media can have, especially with our younger generation. And those kinds of statistics are quite, you know, absolutely out there, and I do not want to say anything more about that because I know that our presenters will be discussing that themselves, and they will obviously go into more detail about those. But also the message there is that, you know, we have huge challenges ahead, and the young people of today have challenges to pick up, whether they're the major big environmental challenges relating to responsible leadership and everything else. So I would now really like to thank everybody who's just joined us. I see quite a few messages have come up, you know, welcoming themselves, the different organizations and as individuals. So I would like to say welcome to everybody and thank you for joining us. My name is Julie Search-Whittaker, and I am the CEO of the Institute for Responsible Leadership. I'm a teacher, I'm a lecturer, and I've had many senior leadership roles in various education establishments, and I'm involved with storytelling, which I love. But youth leadership is very close to my heart because I've worked with young people throughout my entire career. And I still do on a weekly basis in my lecturing, meet young people every single week, and thoroughly enjoy it. I love the challenges. I love what they have to say and understand how important their contributions are. So really, it is now my pleasure to focus on our keynote speaker, Sebastian Hoffbauer, who is our keynote speaker, will share his expertise in this field. Sebastian is a former UN fellow, an executive director of the Geneva-based Global Challenges Forum. His 1 Million 2030 Youth Leadership Initiative has been active from 2019. Sebastian is also an associate of the Institute for Responsible Leadership, and he currently works as a program manager at the Global Surgery Foundation. So I will be introducing other participants before their particular presentation, and we will take questions and answers, which we will sum up at the end of this particular webinar. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Sebastian, who will talk us through youth leadership and social media. Thank you, Sebastian.
Thank you very much, Julie. It's really a pleasure being here today, and welcome also from my side to all the participants and the speakers. I'm really looking forward to a lively event today. And just before I begin, I really like what Alex just said. The world is young. So before we go to the accomplished young leaders in this panel, I've been asked to provide some framing remarks. Could we go to the next slide, please? And one more, please. Yes. One back. Sorry, Sarah. Yes, perfect. So first, I'd like to highlight what, in my opinion at least, is a common misconception, namely that youth are the future. I think they're not the future. I think it's time that we stopped talking about youth as symbols of futuristic hope, and instead let's acknowledge them as actors of the present that need and deserve to be actively included into society. And actually, I think it's us as society who need them and their unique contributions. And a key factor behind this development, I think, is that the internet has actually broken down and continues to break down knowledge monopolies. And this has revolutionized and democratized the way we lead. And it has also changed youth leadership in particular. So today, more than at any time in history, I think the impact that young people are having is tangible, it's real, and it's happening now. It's not happening tomorrow. And in this age of online youth leadership, it's not youth who are the benefactors. It's quite the contrary in a way. It's society that can benefit from online youth leadership, but only if it's responsible. And this brings us to the topic of the webinar, and also a specific type of youth leader I would like to talk about, one who has not received much attention as such. Next slide, please. So for just a second, I would like to invite you to mentally picture a youth leader. Who are you thinking of? Who is the first person or the first persons who come to your mind? And I think also because of Alex's presentation, of course, it's quite likely that you probably thought about Malala or perhaps Greta Thunberg. And I think those are indeed excellent choices. In many ways, they're the ideal youth leader, and arguably even the ideal responsible youth leader. And of course, Alex mentioned them earlier as well, and they are such a perfect example because of their amazing work and their great impact. But today, I don't want to speak about Greta Thunberg or Malala. Quite frankly, I think they're doing great already. Whatever we do, they will hopefully continue to do great things and advance their agendas. And to be blunt, they don't need us talking about them, I think. Next slide, please. So instead, and quite purposefully, I want to speak about another type of youth leader. And that is one that has normally, or is normally not acknowledged as such, but at the same time is a potential leader who could benefit from our help as much as we could benefit from theirs. And as mentioned earlier, the internet has enabled anyone to voice their opinion and to launch initiatives, campaigns, or products, and all that without having access to many resources. And in particular, the rise of social media goes hand in hand with the rise of this new kind of leader I'm talking about. And of course, I'm talking about social media influencers. So I'm sure you're familiar with influencers. Essentially, these are people who build large networks of followers and are regarded as trusted tastemakers in one or several niches. And basically, anyone can be an influencer. It can be a university professor, could be a high school student. But it's not a coincidence that the young generation is quite heavily represented in this field. So going back to the question earlier, where I asked you to imagine a youth leader, I'm wondering if you've ever heard of Emma Chamberlain, who is here at the lower part of the iceberg. And personally, I had not until just a few days ago when I was sort of purposefully looking for influencers. But at the same time, you can trust me when I say that many, many people have heard of her. When she posts on Instagram today, tomorrow, then her post is going to be liked by an average of 2 million people. And if you know how social media works, you know that 2 million likes mean that a even larger amount of people have actually seen the post. How many likes do you think Antonio Guterres gets on his Instagram posts? I actually checked and it's around 10,000. So if my calculations are correct, it's around 0.5 percentage point of Emma's likes. And of course, that's sort of a joke. I don't think Mr. Guterres should care very much about his likes on Instagram. But I think there's something to be said about getting a message out and getting this message to the right people. And I strongly believe that the UN's message should be heard by as many people as possible, and in particular by those who would not actively look for it. So for example, the people that would not attend this webinar or that would not follow Antonio Guterres on Instagram. So I think there's a lot of potential in recruiting the Emma Chamberlains of this world for social causes. Not only do they reach incredibly large audiences, they also reach people that, quite frankly, the UN, for example, traditionally just doesn't reach. So what I would like to argue is that young influencers should be regarded as youth leaders, and that is for better or for worse. And I will speak in a little bit about the fact that many of these influencers, while in my opinion, they are clearly leaders, they are not necessarily responsible leaders. So I think you can see why this type of leader or influencer is such an interesting topic to discuss in a webinar on responsible youth leadership. Next slide, please. So let me talk a little bit about what makes influencers leaders. And indeed, they have been shown to have similar effects on people's opinion as more traditional leaders. And more than that, in the marketing world, influencers are already quite an established force. A recent report, for example, on marketing during COVID-19 has found that influencers are on track to be a $15 billion business. And that is up from 9 billion they generated in 2019. So in around 3 years, they almost stopped. And there's even more. The sharing of content that includes everyday challenges and thoughts makes influencers appear more relatable and trustworthy. It basically helps to build a relationship between the influencer and the follower. So this relationship, of course, is key for any leader. If we speak about marketing, this sector has clearly understood the power that lies within influencers. They are able to tap into the potential and produce profits, both for the influencer and the business that works with them. And I think that the UN or social impact organizations in general could do the same. And they are already, but I think there's a lot more potential. And some of the barriers or challenges that we face are that we need trusted partnership. And in this sector, if we speak about the UN, for example, we need trusted partnerships more than in any other sector. The margin for error is just very small. And that brings us to an important challenge that not every youth leader is responsible. Next slide, please, Sarah. So the question is then, if influencers indeed can be considered leaders in the more traditional sense, which I argue they can, are they what we would consider responsible leaders? Or could they be? And under what circumstances could they be? Or in other words, how could we leverage the potential of young online leaders for positive social impact? These young leaders clearly have a large impact on their followers and also society at large, but just by the nature of their work, they're not necessarily leading for a good cause, or they may even be seen as having a negative impact. And I'm sure you've heard some of the negative impacts that influencers are having. So if you think, for example, about the skewed beauty standards, and many influencers, of course, build their platforms not around social causes. Instead, their position emerges from selling a lifestyle, perhaps beauty trends or travel tips, or maybe gaming tips or something like that. And here it's where they really clearly differ from traditional youth leaders, such as Greta Thunberg or Malala, because these two built their platforms around social causes. And I would argue that responsibility is deeply ingrained into their business model. Basically, they grow and nurture their position by continuing to act responsibly. And of course, the same can typically not be said about influencers. They operate more alike to businesses aiming to make a profit. So the business model basically is that they have a large following on social media, which translates into outreach, which then in turn attracts advertising business. And the more followers they have and the more engaged these followers are, the higher the potential business value. So essentially, influencers are tasked to continuously grow the business value by attracting more and more followers and by keeping them engaged through posting the right content. And here's the problem. There are these two separate goals on the one hand, you have the goal of creating cash value, and on the other hand, you have the goal of acting responsibly. And these two separate goals can clash. Next slide, please. So without going into detail, there are many problems associated with influencers. And as I mentioned before, I'm sure you've heard of some of these instances. It's also not a sector that has a particularly good reputation. Some countries have started to introduce regulations aimed at minimizing these negative results from influencers. In Norway, for example, influencers are now legally obligated to disclose if a post is a paid promotion. In India, the Bombay High Court decided that influencers cannot make statements with the same freedom available to an ordinary person. On the tech side, the major social media platforms are also starting to take influencer fraud more seriously. So for example, Facebook and YouTube both have introduced disclosure guidelines for posts containing branded paid-for content. And then lastly, on the corporate side, major brands have begun to tighten the rules around how they engage with influencers. So to sum up, there are really three major challenges I see here. And first, as is often the case when we speak about the internet, regulation is not enough. So from a society standpoint, there will always be gaps in regulation related to the work of influencers, which can cause negative outcomes. And then second, and this is sort of the view from the business side, the view from the influencer side is that this increased scrutiny, the increased regulation from industry and governance poses a threat even to those influencers that might act responsibly. And third, and this is the view from the UN and similar organizations, these negative connotations associated with influencing also risks that brands will struggle to identify trustworthy influencers with which to partner. And of course, as I mentioned, this is in particular a challenge for organizations such as the UN, who have the primary mission to serve some kind of societal needs. And again, to me, this is quite a big shame, because I think, as I mentioned earlier, there's quite a lot of reasons to partner with influencers, in particular for these organizations. So what I think we need is a mechanism to facilitate trusted partnerships. And of course, in the corporate world, governance gaps surrounding negative business externalities and these issues of trust and common language are nothing new. And in this world, there are some frameworks to mitigate these effects and to facilitate trusted partnerships. For example, of course, corporate social responsibility, or CSR, and this has really become an important part of doing business. And the UN also has a mechanism in place to facilitate these kind of dealings with the private sector, which is the UN Global Compact. Next slide, please. And I think the UN Global Compact clearly meets a need. It's quite successful in terms of the organizations that have signed up for it. And it does, from my own experience working at the UN, it does help partnerships, building partnerships with the private sector. But I think we can easily imagine a sort of similar mechanism for responsible online youth leadership, which is designed to help facilitate a new kind of partnership between influencers on organizations such as the UN, or perhaps even partnerships between influencers and more traditional youth leaders. And therefore, I'd like to introduce influencer social responsibility, or ISR, which could be a potential self-regulating business model that helps an influencer to be socially accountable to themselves, their stakeholders, and the public. And here's an important point, and this is just like in CSR, namely that ISR would not be about charity or philanthropy. Instead, it would need to be positioned and designed in a way to put the creation of additional value for all involved front and center. Number one, I think that influencers could reduce business risk and open new markets. Number two, social impact organizations or the UN could benefit from influencers' outreach. And number three, reducing adverse effects of influencing and also unlocking its positive potential would benefit society as a whole. Next slide, please. So this is already my last slide, and I'd like to simply conclude with these 4 takeaway points. And first of all, in the age of social media, I think youth are not the future. They're actors of the present. Second, young influencers have clearly established themselves among the primary opinion leaders on social media. They are leaders. Third, there are good reasons for organizations such as the UN to work with influencers, but at the same time, there are several barriers that stand in the way of symbiotic partnerships. And then finally, number 4, influencer social responsibility, or ISR, may be a useful framework to overcome those barriers, creating value on different fronts. And with that, I'd like to close, and I invite you to think about what the principles of ISR could look like. And I'm looking forward to the panel discussion. Thank you very much, and back to you, Julie.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. And that was really, really interesting. So thank you so much. Throughout your presentation, there were some questions that were coming from the audience, which I've noted down. And I just will explain again that these will be picked up at the end of this particular, when everybody's presented. So well done, Sebastian. And thank you so much for all of that, many things for us to think about and lots of food for thought. So now I would like to introduce our next panelist, Nadia Ahmed Abdalla. And Nadia is the youngest Chief Administrative Secretary or Deputy Minister at the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs in Kenya. So she is an ideal panel member, and we are delighted that she's contributing to the webinar today. So without further ado, I will pass over to Nadia. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes.
All right. So first of all, Sebastian, that was a very good presentation, very well done. And I'm in full agreement with everything you're saying. In fact, we should really have ways in which we can monitor influencers, young influencers on social media, so as to be able to deliver what exactly we are looking for in targeting, as compared to them just focusing on making money out of it. So it's a win-win situation between us as either the young leaders or the organizations and them, so that they're able to cushion their own livelihood and lifestyle. So kudos to you. And so today I'll be talking about the role of social media by young people in propagating a responsible leadership philosophy. And first, I want to talk about social media. As we know, social media is really widely used and consumed by young people worldwide. It's used to shape the different perceptions that are there in the world. And at times, I see social media as a place where it's built and really fostered a citizenship. It's a new type of citizenship where you're able to speak out your mind, you're able to be active, you're able to advocate, but you're able to really be informed and really participate in civic matters that really help when it comes to understanding the different interests, whether it's government, whether it's private sector, whether it's organizations. And so far, what I've seen from social media, it has really mobilized a new audience of young people to become engaged in either their institution-oriented activities, or when you're looking into socioeconomic and political expression. So you can tell, I'm from the Ministry of ICT Innovation, and I mean ICT, and for us, social media is a big deal. As a government, we really listen to what is happening. In fact, in Kenya, we are called there are Kenyans on Twitter. We're one of the really vibrant and biggest demographic that can really either break, make, or really change something. And so this really says a lot, because a huge percentage of that are people who are tech savvy, and the tech savvy people are actually the young people. And so most of the content creators, we're really deviating from WhatsApp and from the normal messaging, and we're going more into Instagram and Twitter. I mean, leaders these days are going as far as TikTok. You can find people who are actually making music videos or just videos, but using social information or political information to get the word across. And so that really shows and really makes sense of why it is important for us to really build and create a philosophy that will help lead young people when it comes to the social media demographic. And so when I was looking at this question and this topic, I looked at one angle, which was youth engagement and the contribution to responsible leadership. And then when you look at engagement, it's a natural attribute of young people actively participating, not just as individuals, but as part of a community. Because to some other people, you'll see social media as a place of leisure or as a place of making money, but it's actually a new wave of a community that is very important. Take an example, just a few days ago, one of the richest men, if I'm not mistaken, is buying Twitter, Elon Musk. And the wave that he's going with is that he wants to promote freedom of speech online. So what does that really show? It shows that even the social media leaders who are there right now have no boundaries when it comes to engagement. They can say everything to an extreme, not even thinking about what repercussions they can have. And so when Sebastian talked about the influencer social responsibility, it really comes at a very important time right now, because if we don't look at this demographic as people who can influence and as people who can really make or break something and come up with policies or come up with structures that can really lead them. Take an example, social media incubators for leaders. Then we stand a very, very sensitive place, at a very sensitive place where we might now be deviating from what we really want to achieve as leaders. And so it really plays a critical, social media really plays a critical role, in the political and socioeconomic development. And you look at it not only as a country, but you look at it worldwide and globally. Because when you look at how you can tap into the global social media network of communities, you find that people and young people are actively participating in policy advocacy, governance, democratic processes, as well as awareness of creation on certain issues. And social media is actually the very tool that is being used to drive all these things. And at the same time, when people share knowledge on social media, it's really simplified. And when it's simplified, this is targeting that demographic that is actually the now. As Sebastian was saying, youth are not the future. I also don't like it when I'm the youngest in the presidential cabinet, and most of the time it's like, oh yeah, you are the future, but we are not the future. We're actually the now. We're the ones who are now implementing, because we are talking to the demographic that is really where it is right now. Take an example, the African continent. The percentage of people between the age of 0 to 35 is 75%. And the percentage of young people below the age of 35 is 60%. That shows you that the whole continent is actually so young, and it's actually very tech savvy. So we need to offer support to these platforms in various capacities, in various fields, so that we can have a global and national spotlight that is shining on the urgency of us being together and as a collective. And then you can look at also youth shaping responsible leadership decisions. And what I've seen is that there's a shift in power dynamics. As youth, you have taken the lead role in influencing, shaping socioeconomic and political issues and decisions. And we use networks, we use blogs, we use Twitter, we use all these things. We can go to the extreme of protesting, boycotting, creating campaigns. And if we don't look really deeply into these things, we stand at a place where we might actually lose a generation that is now focusing on what can we do to gain money, rather than what can we do to harness this power that we have now to make it good, to create more leaders, to create others who are not even seen and not even heard. An example is, from the time when there was the Arab Spring, to the Black Lives Matter movement, to the End SARS in Nigeria, and so many, young people have played a critical role in raising public awareness online and bringing about change worldwide through the different effective social media tools. So this is an awakening for the young generation. And it signifies the impact of social media when it comes to the economics and the politics of organizations, of civil organizations, of governments. And so we have to really, really look deeply into how do we advance, how do we advocate, and how do we define political consciousness and issues and show the accountability part of it. And then the other thing, how do we merge the social media leaders to the traditional leaders? Because at the end of the day, I believe leadership is not only in politics or in diplomacy or in the different industries that are there. I think anybody can be a leader. Even the young person who is in the village, they can be a leader because they have that voice. They have that dynamic and the strength to be able to move and shape things. And so in conclusion, for me, how we can come up with our own philosophy is by actually using our own voices and actually reflecting and identifying how can we now curate it in a way that we can build on structures and build on policies. And there was somebody who was asking in the chat, how do you define a real leader? I personally believe you cannot define a real leader because everyone has their own leadership ways and means of doing things. You want to be a leader in your specific way, find your key interest. And if you feel like the audience you're getting on social media is the most powerful audience that you can be, try to now think and harness how can we now use that and build on that, and then come up with really positive regulations and positive policies that can actually be there. But in my opinion, social media is now, or has been, but is now the strongest platform that young people are using to define the present and the future of where leadership is going. And so we need to merge the traditional impact together with the social media impact and come up with a really conducive situation where we both win, we both influence and make the world a better place. So thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm muted. Thank you very much, Nadia. Oh, I seem to have lost, there we are. Thank you very much for a fantastic presentation. And I know that there will be lots of questions at the end. I've noted down a few which we will sort of bring back and resurrect at the end. But thank you, that was very exciting. Lots of things to think about there, and echoing similar messages, really. I think we're all very sort of united on understanding the challenges and the necessity for doing something. Okay, so I'm delighted now to introduce our next panelist, Marina El Khawand, and she is the founder of Me Donations, which is based in the Lebanon, and is also a law student and a human rights activist. So Me Donations was founded in 2020 following the tragedy in Beirut. And Marina will now talk about the role social media has played in her own work and a wider agenda. So thank you very much, Marina. I will pass over to you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Sebastian and Nadia, for the great presentation. I fully agree with everything stated, and I hope now I can give concrete examples on how we can use social media and making the true and good impact as we use it in Donations, as I personally try to influence everyone using the platforms now. Kindly next, Tara. So to start with, Donations, who we are. Donations is an NGO that I founded 2 years ago, just after the tragedy that Beirut. As you might all know, that 2 years ago, Beirut faced one of the third largest explosions among history. And this is all due to corruption, and we still don't have any justice prevailed, and we still have no answers why this explosion happened. This explosion really resulted into the loss of too many lives, into to enhance more the economic crisis, medical crisis, sanitary crisis, a bunch of crises happening at the same time in Lebanon, and it's all due to the corruption happening at the government, as we don't have real leaders ruling this country. So we started Donations from the need to give direct medical assistance.
Marina, your screen has frozen. Sarah, is there something we can do about that? No, we can't. Marina, we lost you for a minute there. Your screen froze. So could you just repeat what you said on your first slide?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We just lost you for a moment.
Okay. So who we are, Donations is an initiative that I founded, an NGO that I founded 2 years ago, just right after tragedy in Beirut, as Lebanon and Beirut faced the third largest explosion on a worldwide level. And still now we don't have justice. We don't know who did this and who is behind this crime against humanity, as the government is trying to obstruct anything regarding this and is not taking any actions towards it. So as a future leaders, as the young generation, as youth and change makers of today, and as dreamers and as citizens from Lebanon, and as a human rights activists, we took action to start Donations, because we believe that the right to get medication and the right to get your basic rights is not something that should be turned into something impossible and a need. This is a right, and we should protect this right and give it equally fairly to everyone in need. So what we do basically in Donations is that we give medications, medical assistance, free and fair and equally to everyone in need in Lebanon. And this started 2 years ago. Who we work with? Well, actually, our work started really small with a small group of students, of med students, of the environment and community that we live here in Lebanon, and really increased and emerged day by day by the usage of social media, by the positive usage of social media and social media platforms to reach an international community, which is now for 32 countries. Now Donations is based in Lebanon, but is an INGO and an ENGO online that is based in 32 other countries. So it all started from one click, which is Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. We connected the entire world, the entire expat community, diaspora, foreigners, human beings, human rights activists, donors, beneficiaries, anyone believing in the mission and vision of this in one single click. Please, next, Sarah. So what is it for us to be a youth responsible leader? Because to be a leader as it is will not really fulfill the role in an NGO placement. You must be responsible and committed and dedicated into your role to be able to lead the change that we are asking for, to lead the change and do the change that the community is needed for. So starting from emergency and from an urgent action in Lebanon, as an example, as in my donations, it led me as a personal, individual initiative to be a leader of this small group, and then to be a leader of this NGO that is now acting on a worldwide level. So a youth responsible leadership is someone who is dedicated to take risks at any time, anywhere, and to try to find a solution from no actual rational solutions. This solution that Med Donations implemented in the country is not really a rational solution because it should be implemented by the Ministry of Health or by the government as all, but is now taken a responsibility and solution to try to act in the right place and right time. How the youth in Lebanon and the region are contributing to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So from all the goals, we chose the most particular and urgent role and SDG Lebanon needed is to give the right access to medical assistance and education. Medical assistance is a priority, which is good health and well-being. We started hosting online webinars, online Instagram lives with international MD doctors, international PhD students and holders, med students, pharmacists from Lebanon and abroad. And especially this happened once we were facing COVID-19 virus, and we had all the time to use social media to enhance our abilities and to use the trends back then and now to the good of the community. So we shared awareness live sessions to be able to let the people know and ask Q&As how to act with every single medical staff assistance, how to act with the symptoms of COVID, what is for the vaccines, what is the call of every single doctor, and how to seek help. So from this, we used Instagram as a way to communicate with professionals and to share awareness to everyone in need of it for free. And they can access to this equally and access to this fairly at any time. And we also try to reduce inequalities in which it's not based on any single region, it's overall, anyone, anywhere, at any time can click on this and can be connected. Sarah, please. So going deep inside our main focus today and our main discussion about social media and importance to be an importance channel for delivering real-time news, urgent news, and how social media influencers and responsible leaderships can really take role. So one of our big medical collection points as an example that happened with us was led by a social media influencer. She's a Lebanese living in Qatar, and she used her platform, which is a normal platform, normal blogger platform to market clothes and things to social issues and social fundraisings. So she posted a story on Instagram in which she launched a call to collect medications for Lebanon. And from this one single story, it's made a ripple effect to 4 new countries in the MENA region, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Dubai, and Kuwait. So we launched 4 consecutive international med drives, international collection points, due to this one story shared by this influencer on social media, calling for social responsibility, calling for social action, and social humanitarian solidarity with Lebanon. From this story also, she was able, with the help of the Lebanese community and foreigners living in Qatar, to collect 1.8 tons of donations to Lebanon. Can you just imagine how an influencer can use their social media platforms for the good of the community to help changing and saving lives every single day, and to be this collection point between organizations, to partner with organizations, and to have this concrete example between our hands, to see that from one single story, from one single action taken by one influencer, what was the effect of saving thousands of lives, of changing thousands of lives, of changing really, of making the radical change in a country facing terrible and unprecedented times and crisis. So from here, I can say that social media is one of the basic primary most important tool in our work in Med Donations, in which everything we need is shared online. All our needs are being directly fulfilled in an hour or two due to social media. We are being able to connect with the entire international communities via the social media platforms. So by using social media in the good and right way, you can really do a very big positive impact, not only on one single individual, not only to be the responsible leadership and leading and making the impact that you need on a personal level, but you can change a whole community and the whole nation's future by doing these actions on social media. Kindly next, Sarah. So how can normal influencers cross the bridge to reach responsible leadership on social media? First, by sharing the context that you need in a very straightforward word, by sharing good and positive news on your platforms, by paying attention that you have a big variety of followers in which these followers might be facing terrible challenges in their countries and their communities. So you must be very considerate, very responsible, and very aware of what you share, to use your platform as a voice so everyone can hear it, because as in our communities, our voices are not heard. So as youth, the only way to reach our voices to the international community, to make the change, to drive the change that we need, and to be acting today before tomorrow, is by using social media. So we can share all updates together, we can share our voices, we can share our struggles, we can share our needs, we can share also our achievements, as we will do now. Sarah, please. So all Med Donations campaign, which is an NGO registered in Lebanon, are e-campaigns. All campaigns, all fundraisings, the free clinic, the medical drive, the medical assistance, the lives shared, are all e-campaigns, which are campaigns shared online on our platforms. The donors share them, beneficiaries share them, influencers does, international communities. So everyone, by a click, can share it. What did these e-campaigns have as an outcome? First, the international med drives. It was something for the first time happening ever in Lebanon, to do a collection point outside the country and get medication and medical support from the outside without the interference of any governmental association, of any ministry, of any politician or political party. It was only free, independent, led by youth, responsible leaders. So every collection med drive now happening in the 32 countries stated now here, as you can see, from Europe, from Asia, from the MENA region, from the US, from Australia. We have 32 countries impacting and doing this change through social media. And how we all connected through 2 years, we were visible. And this interconnectedness between us two, this two-way dialogue through social media made this happen. This was just impossible for us. It was just a dream. How can we connect with all this big load of communities? How can we reach to Australia? How can we reach to Kenya? How can we reach to Geneva? It is impossible by just being sitting here. So through social media, it is really a very powerful weapon that can spread the word, raise the voice on critical things happening, on critical situations, and can for surely be of a great impact, of great favor of the communities. Please next, Sarah. So as we move forward in a fast way, saving lives in 1 year as Med Donations, because of the international med drives led and because of the international communities that we were able to reach, 10,000 400 or approximately now 11,000 lives were saved. 11,000 individuals reached and had a fully equal access to their basic right, which is medication, because of the international social media and field collection med drives that were launched. Also, we have the treatments and surgeries covered in Lebanon and other things that we can see now in the next slide, Sarah. As we can see that we saved Lebanon's last breath because of the e-campaigns launched. As you can see the numbers below, how many oxygen machines in COVID-19 we were able to get, how many lives saved, how many rapid tests done, how many medical supplies and masks we were able to get from abroad, and only from abroad, via passengers traveling, and being the connection between passengers traveling from abroad to Lebanon, and making the social connection all being real and realistic and on field. Next, Sarah, please. And also building a better tomorrow, because as we know, we are the leaders of today. We are the leaders of today. We are the change makers of today. We are the lifesavers of today, but we need to ensure that our future generations have equal opportunities, have fair opportunities to make the change that we are doing today and much more, to use the benefits of all the responsible leadership, to drive the change, to do the impact that we are doing and much more on a much bigger scale. So that's why we also had an educational campaigns also led by people living abroad, giving free educational sessions to people living here and to the most vulnerable, because some and the majority of the families here in Lebanon, due to the crisis happening, cannot afford paying for their education anymore. So we were able to also ensure this right and have some of the potential donors donate some of the stuff needed. Please continue, Sarah. So at a sum up, now my donations will be moving into a new thing, a new system-wide thing to connect the world much more easier way, not only via Instagram, not only via Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube. We are building a system in which we can connect all doctors, nurses, pharmacists, med students, pharmacy students, biochemistry students, and beneficiaries all around the globe to access their proper medications. So we will have a connection of the professionalist part and the people in need. They can ask questions, they can inquire anything they need at any time, and they can request their medication as well via a prescription. So this system and this website will be launched hopefully soon in the upcoming month, as we are working on it, to make everything via social media will be the most easy part and the most impactful part, guys. So please be able, and I'm sure that everyone here can be a leader of today, can be a responsible leader, and it's easy to use these tools that we have now in hands. It's a privilege for us, as we know that this a click or this tool can really save a life and do a great impact and do the change that we always dream of in any community, in any state, in any situation. So from here, I invite you all now to enter to Med Donations and follow us on all the platforms here to stay connected for the better of tomorrow in all communities, to stay connected between news happening in Lebanon and all around the globe, between medical assistance and how to see together to be able to fight for human rights and try to encourage many more to be responsible leaderships in their own communities and nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Well, that was a very passionate, and very interesting presentation. And I have got some questions that have come through, which we'll obviously pick up at the end, because always these kind of presentations stimulate all kinds of responses, which is what it's all about. So thank you very much for your very detailed presentation, and with that very strong message of the power of social media, which is which is what we need to understand and embrace. So thank you. So without further ado, I'd like to move on to Adrian. Adrian Sladdin, he works closely with young people on many different projects. He's the director of the Seventh Wave Corporation Training and the director of the Seventh Wave Education Group. and also environmental participation with young people. He's also a safer gambling consultant, so has a lot of insight into the understanding of young people. And we're very much looking forward to your presentation, Adrian.
Julie, thank you ever so much. Very good afternoon to everybody from here in London. I'm delighted to be with you for a second time. It's the second time that Julie has kindly invited me to participate in these wonderful online global sessions. Sadly, I agreed to do this before Julie told me actually what the agenda was. And so when she said, Adrian, it's about leadership, I said, okay, thank you very much, that's good. It's about young people. I said, thank you very much, Julie, that's good. And then she said, and it's about social media, Adrian. At which point I began to think very carefully about whether I'd made a bad mistake or not. But I'm delighted to say that I haven't made a bad mistake. And I've come to talk to you this afternoon about something very near to my heart, which is something called EnviroEducation. And if we could have the next slide, please, Sarah, I'll just begin to tell you a little bit of the narrative about this organization that we've created called EnviroEducation. You may remember something called lockdown, and some of you may have heard of something called COVID-19, possibly. Certainly it happened here, and we built ourselves a lovely office here in the garden, which was a great idea, but we also needed an education project. So we decided to come up with something called EnviroEducation. And that's really what I want to talk to you about this afternoon, to see whether you think that we're going to harness the power of young people and social media in a very interesting and environmental way. Julie's very kindly mentioned a few things about me, but if we could have the next slide, Sarah, I just want to explain a little bit about how I've got to this environmental area of my life. So for 30 years now, I've been working with young people on lots of different projects, both as a teacher and as a trainer. I've been to Pakistan, Africa, China. I work on European Union projects, and always young people are at the heart of those. And I find more and more that social media and technology, digital tools are something that we use more and more in these projects. So that's very interesting. Secondly, for longer than I care to remember, I was either on the board of trustees or chair of trustees at a global organization called the Jane Goodall Institute. And if you've heard of Jane Goodall, she's a great primatologist, global scientist, and I worked as her chair of trustees in the UK. And we had a lovely education program, which I looked after for quite a long time as well. Suddenly, out of nowhere last year, we all heard about something called ESG, Environmental, Social and Governance. You might know that this is now the new CSR, and the environmental piece, of course, is very, very important for us as well. So again, I wanted to kind of get my credentials in front of you for that. And finally, why am I here? Well, I've been working with Julie and Mike on a book around responsible leadership in education. So I hope that not just me, but quite a few of us are ticking the right boxes for you today. Okay, great. So let's move on to the next slide. As a good teacher, I will not read this out to you, but I'll try and pick out the highlights because you can read faster than I can. But what have we been doing with our EnviroEducation? Well, we've been bringing teachers, educationists and young people together because we're trying to actually create the next Greta Thunberg. And although Sebastian's quite right, we don't need to help Greta anymore, we do need to grow a whole generation of new Greta Thunbergs. And so that's what we've been doing with our lovely lockdown project. We've created an organization which supports young people, and in particular, it supports their social media. And if you see my little middle paragraph there, we don't just kind of look at Twitter, but we also look at things like filmmaking, podcasting, very happening, broadcasting on national television. And our young leaders are beginning to harness digital technology to get their message around the UK. And actually what I thought would be interesting today is looking at those of you in the chat on the right-hand side is, Can we do something more global in this space? So let's look at the next slide, and I'll show you our lovely young leaders that we've got at the moment. These are 8 of them on our website, and I will put our website in the chat for you right this very second, so that you've got that there. But we've recruited all these brilliant young people. They're all very different, they're very diverse, and we're very inclusive of ages, ethnicities, genders in this space. But all of these people feature on our website, and they all have their own social media going on. They all have Twitter accounts, and we've brought them all together into this space to harness the power of each one of them. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you a really lovely example. This is Indy Green. You'll find him obviously on Twitter. I just checked today. I think he's got something like 10,000 followers at the moment. A couple of years ago, he was on probably sort of single figures, 3 figures. But on our website, we cover not just who the individual is, but we also have their live Twitter feed going through, so they gain more people, they work together in a collaborative way, and they have the opportunity to share their ideas with each other on Twitter, but also through our central portal. Indy's a great birder, great ornithologist. He's been on national television, he's been on the BBC presenting, all-round fantastic guy, home educated as well, so really kind of free spirit. And if you like the look of him, you'll find him on Twitter today. Wanted to show you someone who's not Indy. So the next slide shows us a very young student, Rebecca. And Rebecca's an author of books about butterflies. Again, she's got her own Twitter account. She broadcasts, and again, lots and lots of followers on there as well. And we're trying to encourage more young people to follow our young leaders and actually sign up to the idea of EnviroEducation. And for young people, it's free participation. Although we are a training organization, this is about getting young people to interact. We're also doing things like building digital toolkits with our young people, so that they know not just how to be a leader in their expertise, but how to be a leader in social media, in broadcasting. And if we just move on to the next slide, please, Sarah. You can see that we're all focused on either the environment or the planet, but the idea is that we aim to inspire the next generation of thought leaders in this space. Or maybe, as a couple of our panelists have said, actually, these are the leaders in this space right now. We can maybe argue that point. If we move on to the next slide. So our 2 main curriculum areas, or 2 main subject areas, are environmental and animals. And as long as our young people subscribe to something that works in those areas, then we don't ask anymore. We say, you're the enthusiast about bees or birds or picking up litter, and you're leading that conversation. So it's very much up to the young people as to how it works, but we support them either in schools or in youth centres and go in and deliver inspirational afternoons. And we also work with primary schools to try and get younger pupils engaged in the process as well. Next slide, please, Sarah. We also look at skills. I've spent the last 15 years very much not thinking about so much about knowledge, but about skills. And these are what we need going forward. So not just leadership, but creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication. And I think there are probably a few more skills in there that we might say around problem solving and other things as well. But skills are very, very important. Moving up one more slide, please. Again, if you didn't know the rationale for why young people should work on things like this, you can see we did a really nice kind of scoping idea around planet Earth. We know that we need to act now, but also things like we support academic skills, we support resilience, public demand, healthy school. And again, during the pandemic, we were passionate about getting people outside into open spaces. We were passionate about making sure that young people led healthy lifestyles and mentally healthy lifestyles as well. So it's really important that we embrace this bit of the agenda. Final slide shows that not just do we support young people, but we're also a kind of portal. And again, if you want to follow us today, we're EnviroEducation on Twitter. And you can see, can't you, ladies and gentlemen, that we haven't got quite as many followers as Indy yet. So if you want to follow us, you get a central kind of view of all of these brilliant young people. And if you want to send your young people to us, we will be delighted to see them participating in interactions with our young people as well. I can see though, Julie, that my timer says my time is up. So I'm going to stop there and hopefully we might get some questions in the box there. But otherwise, thank you everybody for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Adrian. And no, highly relevant, because it's all about that same message about how we're embracing social media with our young people in whatever topics we're doing. So thank you very much for that. I'm very conscious of the time, so I'm going to introduce Mike Eldon and wondered if you could sort of keep to the time, Mike, so that we can have some opportunity for questions and answers which are coming through, and I can then sum up. So I know that you're going to introduce somebody as well as part of your delivery, but Mike Eldon, so I'm delighted to introduce Mike Eldon. He is a founding member of the Institute for Responsible Leadership, amongst many other roles. He was a chairman of the council of the KCA University. He pioneered the development of the use of IT in Kenya and was deeply involved with the development of Kenya's first national ICT policy. He will now discuss the importance of involving young people in organisations to promote responsible leadership via active engagement. Okay, thank you, Mike. You're on mute. You're still on mute, Mike.
Yes, I had been muted, so I thought I was being unmuted. Good evening, everyone, and it's been great to hear all the other presentations, not least, of course, my wonderful fellow Kenyan Nadia, and I look forward to meeting you, Nadia, and to chatting about my time many years ago in the IT field. I agreed to be a panelist here on condition that I did not focus on the social media. And I'm also an outlier in that I decided not to have any PowerPoint slides. So Sarah, you're off the hook, you can relax. As soon as I thought about this topic, when we started discussing it among ourselves in the Institute for Responsible Leadership and with UNITAR. And by the way, what a wonderful relationship we have between these two organizations, and it's good to see us being together here today. As soon as I thought about the topic, I thought about two organizations that I thought would be worth talking about in this global context where we find ourselves. Two organizations that develop responsible young people around the world, and very much including here in Kenya. The first one I want to talk about is Rotaract. And Rotaract is the Young Person's Rotary. I've been a member of the Rotary Club of Nairobi here in Kenya since 1978. And the first job I was given in 1978 was careers guidance, which is so important for young people and in so many cases so lacking. And I joined the Rotary Club and I started running those workshops for self-exploration and for linking young students up with employers. And I started working with Rotaract. At that same time, in the late 70s, we had a scholarship that was being funded through through Cyprus at the Mediterranean Institute of Management. And we had Rotaractors apply for these scholarships, postgraduate ones. And we selected a young man who Nadia will have heard of, called Kalonzo Musyoka, to whom we awarded the scholarship. He was a Rotaractor. He later joined our Rotary Club. He later became an MP, and he became foreign minister, vice president, and who knows, he might be declared soon the running mate for one of the presidential candidates again. So this Rotaract is a great developer of young people. The present president of our Rotary Club is in his early 50s now. He first joined the Rotary world through being a Rotaractor. When I was president of our Rotary Club in the mid-80s, I restarted our Rotaract Club, and the first two presidents of that club I got from my own organization, my own IT organization, and they went on to be leaders in the IT industry. And one of them became the CEO of the then leading internet service provider, Africa Online, David Maruri. And he came to see me on the day he was appointed, and he said, Mike, if it hadn't been for Rotaract, I wouldn't have got this job. I've also introduced different young people to Rotary who've gone on to have international roles in Rotary. And I can't speak highly enough for how Rotary has this mentoring downwards. Mike Sachs, my colleague in IRL, asked about senior actors for facilitating responsible leadership in youth. So Rotary does that very much with Rotaractors. And we also have inverse mentoring upwards, not least in this digital space, from Rotaractors to Rotarians. We have a mentoring group within our Rotary Club for that. So Rotary has its values. We have our four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Does it build goodwill and better friendship? Is it beneficial to all? And so we promote responsible leadership, and people develop personal skills in leadership, working in committees, in boards, and so many other ways, project management, fundraising. The other organization I want briefly to talk about is the International Economic Students Association, AIESEC, A-I-E-S-E-C. And I first came across it when I was an undergraduate in the mid-60s, and I had 3 internships in France, in America, and it made me who I am. It introduced me to the computer industry, as it was then called. And when I came here to Kenya in the late 70s, I joined the board of advisors of an emerging AIESEC organization here. It has done amazing work internationally with these international partnerships, just like Rotaract, to develop responsible young leaders. And with me here today is Samuel Munawesa, who is currently the chairman of the Strathmore University. It's one of the leading universities here, chapters of AIESEC. It's people go on internships, they have all sorts of programs, they develop partnerships with leaders in the private sector, and it's another way of developing responsible leadership. I'm sure that most of the young people who are members of Rotaract and AIESEC are as social media active as anyone else that's been talking here. Many of them have reached out to me, and I've reached out to them through social media and have got to know them, including Samuel. And Samuel, just let me check. Are you there? Are you there, Samuel? Is Samuel there? Is he on the list of participants? Oh, yes, he says yes. So can you unmute him, please, so that Samuel can say a few words? I can't hear you, Julie, either. You're muted.
Sarah, are you able to unmute Sam? I think, Mike, what we'll do is we'll just continue on until that happens, if that's okay, because
Yes,
I'm just
okay.
very mindful of the time. Just got a couple of minutes left before we need to answer the questions.
Okay, so let me just talk about one or two other organizations for developing responsible leaders. One is the Mathare Youth Sports Association, which has developed young people in the slums in Nairobi through football, and the Shamas Rugby Foundation that's done it through rugby. And I'm sure, Nadia, you've heard, I'm sure, about MISA, if not about Shamas. And they've done a terrific job developing young people and the life skills, just like we were hearing from Adrian about developing life skills through what he does. I'm seeing Samuel up there on the among us.
He's there now, yeah. Hi,
So
Sam.
let me switch off and have Samuel switch on.
Yes. So it's a pleasure of mine to be here, to be speaking in this event. So I'm from ISAC in Strathmore. ISAC is a global organization that's youth-led, and it encourages or it fosters leadership by doing. So you actively learn leadership skills. You actively learn how to be a responsible leader and make good and impactful decisions. In ISAC, you lead through values. You lead sustainably, and you lead with the purpose of making it better for the next generations that are coming. So ISAC has been a great platform for me personally, to be able to learn how to lead an organization of other young people. I lead a team of about 65 people in ISAC in Strathmore, and it has changed my mindset because I'm developing these other 65 people to become great leaders, and it's been a great experience for me. I'd encourage every young person on the call who is in university to join. It's a great space for you to learn, to lead, and you learn by doing. I think that's what distinguishes ISAC from other youth organizations or some youth organizations, that you actively lead. You lead by doing it now. So it's been my delight to speak here. If you have any questions for me at the end on how we are working on social media or anything else, I'll be available to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam, and thank you very much, Mike, for your contributions. So what I'm going to propose now, given the time, is I've had a number of questions that have come through, and I have put some together because there are sort of 2 or 3 that I'd like to put back to the panel. So the first one that came up, which Nadia actually picked up quite early on, in Sebastian's presentation, you referred to the right leader. And Sebastian has been asked, how would you define the right leader in terms of the social media world, as opposed to what is a good leader? I don't know if you could comment anything about that.
Thank you. That's a great question, difficult question. I guess it depends very much on the context. I think why I was speaking about influencers is because I feel like they are in many ways the right leader for this day and age on social media, because clearly they've understood how the platforms work. They know how to leverage it. They know how to reach their followers, and they know how to get the message across. And I think the whole responsibility issue aside, that makes them good, let's say, right leaders and good partners. And then we need to find ways from a sort of UN perspective to mitigate the risks that come with working with these kind of leaders. But yeah, I think that is why I chose to speak about influencers, because I feel like they understand the medium and they understand how to get a message across to the right people.
Thank you very much. And I have a question that's come up from Johan Frazen about, can influencers work with standard policy to help them filter information, which sort of comes up with the questions of ethics in the, in social media. And I want to link that to a comment that's been made about the power of social media, and somebody anonymously has put, we have got the power. Marina, you used a phrase, just one click and lots of things can happen. Nadia, you also referred to the numbers involved, in things that you were doing. I just wondered, Marina, if you had any comments to make about the power of that just one click and how we might manage the ethics behind that. It's all very well if it's a very good cause, but how do we consider some of the filters we might have, or how do we go about things moving forward to make sure that that just one click is for a positive reason? So have you got any comments on that?
Okay, sure. Well, one click can connect you with the international community. One click can make a huge impact, but how this click should be made, and this click, before you make this click, you should have the full awareness of who you are clicking to by following or liking or sharing. What are you clicking to? And what is the context and content of the post or thing that you are sharing? Because your platform is a responsibility, and what you are sharing as a responsible leadership or as a responsible influencer on social media will directly affect and impact your personal image. So, and your followers too. So whatever you share on social media must always be based on awareness, on research, and on full attention on what you are sharing, guys, with everyone. Social media is not a limited platform. It can be outreach to anyone. As here, now we are reaching a whole community, a globe, the international globe, a worldwide level. So this click can lead you to many problems, at the same time can lead to a very positive and a huge and massive impact. So it all depends on your ability to raise awareness in yourself as an individual, and raise awareness to the people that are following you on what is the context and content of the things that must be shared, that it should not harm anyone or cause harm to any community. At the contrary.
Okay, thank you. Now, I would just like to say something. I've had lots of messages through to ask for these slides to be posted to individuals. I will also announce that this information will be posted on the Institute for Responsible Leadership website, of which I will pass the details to Sarah. And Sarah, you can then maybe disseminate those details as well. But given the time, I would like to sum up, and if there are any further questions that you want to ask of the panelists, if you email or make contact with Sarah, she can pass them on and I can filter them out appropriately, because I won't have time to go through with some of the conversations that we want to. I would like to sum up before I personally thank everybody on the panel by saying that there's some really key messages that have come out, and it would be wonderful to have this particular topic, for about 3 hours. But first of all, I think the powerful message is that youth is not about the future, it's about now, it's about today, and it's about everything that young people are already doing. Another thing is about the social influences and the absolute power that they have to influence lots of people very, very quickly. And that phrase, the power of one click, I think is very, very powerful. I also think that, as well as the actual power of social media in all sorts of ways, we have, which was echoed in a previous webinars we've done, alongside that needs to go, of course, with responsible leadership, but also we need to be mindful of a digital divide out there. So there is a digital divide. So we need to ensure that maybe some other policies come in place to make sure everybody can access this very, very powerful tool of influence and communication moving forward. And of course, the challenge is to ensure, as you know, I'm sorry, Marina, you were put on the spot because that was a question that came in. The challenge is to ensure that responsible leadership comes through with all of those communications, and then the kind of activities that Adrian has discussed about starting with young people working in all kinds of ways to be responsible leaders with their planet, or with, you know, looking after the environment, and how Mike Eldon has described how a model of working by doing, and as Sam has sort of endorsed that, is very, very powerful. It shows us with what I think everybody would agree, the incredibly energetic and enthusiastic presentations that were given, because this is an area that, you know, leadership in the future and younger people leading now and in the future is a hugely topical and important thing for us to be addressing. So I would like to mention a book that I think was referred to earlier, which is a forthcoming publication, a joint publication entitled Responsible Leadership and Essential to Achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And this will be available later this year, and is published by Routledge. I'm very excited about that, because that kind of embraces a lot of things we've been speaking about today and a much wider agenda. And I would also like to personally thank a number of people. So I'd like to say thank you to Alex for sending us his video at the last moment, because obviously it's been called off to essential business. I would like to thank Sarah for all of the work behind the scenes. And I would like to personally thank all of our panelists, Sebastian, Nadia, Marina, Adrian, and Mike, for an excellent presentation, and to reinforce that all of this will be available to those who have joined and participated. And please send questions through to Sarah, who will forward them to me. Thank you very much. I don't know, Sarah, if you've got any final remarks about closing down. No. Okay. So thank you very much for your participation, and have a very good evening wherever you are, or whatever your time is, wherever you are in the world. Okay. Thank you. And goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.